think it's great that we have that many people to come out and just experience city government. Usually we have these meetings and there's a handful of people. I love it when people are passionate about things. This just happened to be somebody's house that I can see from my deck on my backyard. It was a difficult one for me to be involved with because I got people that approached me from both sides of the issue. I feel like we did the right thing tonight. We listened to everyone, but in the end, we went with a recommendation that came to us that has been vetted by staff, that have been vetted by the CRA, and it comes to us and it allows for 4 students at a time. I know some people aren't going to like that I talk to because it's more than 1. It's more than 0. They don't want any traffic, and I totally understand that. On the flip side, I do believe we have to support home businesses. I think that is something that allows, especially in this case, the music, the fine arts to thrive. To be able to do that in a home setting is much more cost effective. I just can't see us going to 8, and I believe it was 8 of us that agreed that it shouldn't go to 8. And even with Chuck Hosey's comments, I really understood what he was saying, and that's why it was a hard issue. On the flip side, I could have seen us sticking with 1 as well, because it is something that when you do a city code the way we have it now, it doesn't differentiate between a huge city block or a cul-de-sac or an apartment. Right. You can have 8 in an apartment or 4 in an apartment in this case. It's not differentiated. That's something that we're going to have to look at. And I think just Chuck's comments kind of brought that up and saying that we should have 8, but other people saying we shouldn't even have more than 1. So I think we came to a good solution tonight. I don't know if the issue is solved, but I believe the system worked tonight. You know, we oftentimes say there's going to be more conversation on something, but typically I've seen things just work themselves out. And neighbors work with neighbors, and code enforcement doesn't get called because there aren't problems. So, you know, whatever happens with this, I don't know that we will hear about it going back to 8. I do hope that we take a hard look in the next few years when the time is right to look at differentiating that based on the type of residence. But I don't think we'll hear much more about this one. That's my hunch. You know, anytime we're talking about raising rates and you start throwing percentages out there, it is something that you take a little pause, right? And I'm going first as a ratepayer myself. I'm thinking if I'm paying, I think ours is typically in the 150, let's say, and we're talking about a 6% increase, you know, I'm looking at another $9 a month. That's not too bad. I can handle that. I was really interested in seeing how we compare with other cities in the state. And those are, when we look at economic development, we look at recruiting people to move to Grand Island. Those are some things that are really important. And I don't know if we talk about them enough. I really believe what I learned tonight is we are super competitive. And we don't brag about that. Whether it's from the business side, for the commercial rates that we have, and where we rank and stack up against other Nebraska cities, or even just the residential, we are on the low end of just about all of this. The one that is an outlier, it's still not that much of an outlier, and that's with the sewer. But nearly everything, we're the top. We are the lowest prices, the most affordable, and yet we have been making great investments in these infrastructures to make sure that we're not going to have an emergency. And I love that we can take the time to say, all right, let's do, in one of these cases, a 6% increase, and then another 6%. And we do that for 4 years, potentially, and then a 3% and a 2%. That's 6 years out. Well, I got it on my phone. I factored that in. If the average is $30 now, in 6 years, it'll be $40. But we'll be offsetting potential $5 million bonds every year that we can go ahead and prepare for. You start having some smart growth discussions like that, where you can say, we're going to lessen the future burden by giving everybody a small piece now. We're not talking about raising everybody's rates by 5 times. We're talking 5%. It is something I think that we have to look at to be prepared for the future. And I'm really impressed with what we heard tonight. Yes, I want to talk to them in the streets, because when I learn stuff here, I know as much as we hope everyone is watching this broadcast tonight and absorbing all of this, they're not. The typical person just sees that bill when it comes once a month. And perhaps they're going to notice that it's a little higher if we make all of these changes. But the key word there is a little. We're talking with all of these percentages and all these different rates with electric and water and sewer, on average about $7 more a month. And then maybe it's another $5, $6 a month the next year that it goes up. So yes, in 2 years, it's gone up like $11 a month overall. That does accumulate. You're talking $150 a year across the board, all these services. That's something that we can't just say, oh, it's nothing. But it gets us a lot for that, to prevent us from going from $130 to $200 down the road to $300 the next year. I believe everybody was shocked by the valuations for property tax. It's because we didn't incrementally adjust that. What we're talking about here is really smart, to look ahead and say, let's not shock everybody later. Let's do small steps. And while they might not be tiny, they're pretty small compared to what our property taxes went up. I'm a business owner, so I get that, there's some cost behind the scenes for any organization, and you want to protect your customers, in this case, ratepayers, taxpayers. You want to protect them as much as possible. That's why you build up those cash reserves. That's why, with a fiscally responsible organization like we're running here at the city, our finance department has been pretty wise for the last decade to just to avoid the ratepayers seeing that constant fluctuation. We can't rely on that forever. You got to start reinvesting in that so that we don't have to see panic. And those skyrocketing costs and on the back end, I'm pretty proud of the city that hasn't been reflected in inflation carried on to the customer, because we were prepared. We were here for 3 hours and 15 minutes tonight, and I know they're probably not going to watch this, but we had a public hearing towards the end, and I really felt bad for the gentleman from the Hooker Brothers item, that they waited 3 hours to have a conversation amongst themselves that we could have probably taken care of early, and I just appreciate them sticking it out. And anybody who watched the whole thing tonight, I know my wife did not. She texted me at 8 o'clock and said, "You're on your own." I get it. Sometimes it's not exciting to watch government in action. So those who did, and for those that had to stick around, I appreciate it.